Hello and welcome to episode 45 of Movies You Missed podcast. I'm V.
I'm John.
And I'm back from being sick.
Yay, welcome back, V. We missed you last week.
Thank you, sir, and thank you again to your wonderful wife for stepping in and saving my ass last week. I was very, very sick, and she did a fantastic job.
It seems she did. I had a great time having my wife on this episode. She picked a great movie. I picked a great movie. We had a lot of fun discussing both of them, not only at home on the couch, but on a microphone together. It was a lot of fun. It was very cool. But I'm glad to have my co-host back and jump back into things for a lengthy conversation.
Thank you, sir. Me too. And I'm really excited about this episode because it's a sport that is near and dear to my heart.
And it is far away from my heart because I don't really know much about vehicular anything. So this was definitely a fun one. My pick, though, is one of the very few movies I very much enjoy in this realm. I'm not a big Fast and the Furious fan. This is definitely not something like Fast and the Furious. This is based on true story type stuff that we're getting into today, and I will get into it. I'm just excited because both of them were fantastic films.
And both based on true stories.
Yes, indeed. Real people, real events, real drama.
But before we get into that, we always like to ask each other if we've seen any new movies in the last week.
Yes, and I have. I've seen 2 new movies, 2 of which are Best Picture nominees. I started with Triangle of Sadness. Something told me to start with that one, and I did. I rented it on Apple TV. No idea how it got a Best Picture nomination. No idea how it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. No idea. It's not a horrendously terrible movie, but it's 2 hours and 40 minutes of rich people bitching, and I don't need to watch that. And there were moments that were funny, but overall, I'd give it like a C-. Like if I were grading a test, I would give this like a 70 out of 100.
Okay, yeah.
Only because Woody Harrelson had a moment that was really funny, and that was like the funniest part of the movie for me.
Oh, I love him.
He's great. And then a few days later, I watched the Todd Field, Cate Blanchett-led Tar, which blew me the fuck away. I thought it was just epic, fantastic, beautifully shot, wonderfully acted, very well written, very sharp, very poignant, very profound, very right now. Turns a very familiar subject over the last few years on its head, I felt, and I loved the way that it was portrayed. And I think, V, you might have watched one of those 2 in the last couple of days.
I did. I also watched Tar in the last couple of days. I, too, loved the movie.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
It was a slow burn. The tension was real. I had anxiety throughout most of the movie.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, it's a gorgeously shot film. It felt meticulous. It was beautiful settings with cinematography that was so perfect. The color balance was there. Everything felt purposeful. And goddamn, Cate Blanchett, I'm actually rooting for her for Best Actress this year.
It's a tough one for me. I loved Michelle Yeoh and Everything Everywhere All at Once, but after watching Tar, it's an intense fight this year, I think, for Best Actress, and I love that there are 2 wonderful performances such as these to battle out the night of the Academy Awards, and I gotta say, I don't mind either one of them taking it, but I think it's tough to say what my favorite part of Tar was because it's broken up into different chapters, but that first hour of exposition, I could not take my eyes off the screen. I was just so drawn in by her pathos and how calm and collected she was as, this conductor. And the beautifully written movie, which I believe Todd Field wrote in like 12 days. Like I said, it turns a familiar subject on its head, and I liked the way that it was done. Noémie Merchant from Portrait of a Lady on Fire is also in the film, which was awesome. Get to hear her speak English, which we did not get to do in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and I thought she was a fantastic supporting character in this movie.
Yes, and there are a lot of big names in this movie as well. I mean, Alec Baldwin makes an appearance, Mark Strong, Julian Glover is in it. If anybody remembers him, he is the he's the guy.
I don't remember Alec Baldwin.
You remember his voice when they're editing her Wikipedia page, and his voice is a voiceover in it. That was Alec Baldwin.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah,
and I watched credits.
I know. And then Julian Glover is very famous for being in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He's the guy that betrays them and his face famously melts off. And he turns into the Crypt Keeper at the end of the movie.
That's right. Oh, yeah. When I first watched it and I saw Mark Strong show up, I was like, oh, V will like at least this part, if not the entire movie.
Yes, exactly.
But Mark Strong's wearing that wig, I gotta say.
It was so bad. The wig wasn't bad. It was a very good wig, but he looked terrible.
Yes. He looked
very frumpy.
Very, very strange.
But yes, it's a great movie. It's interesting. I've talked to people who have mixed opinions on this movie. One of my friends said it was incredibly dry and it took her 3 days to finish it. Another friend loved it. And I can see both sides. I mean, it is a very...
Definitely.
I don't want to even say slow burn. It's an intense character study. This is not an action movie. This is not a comedy. This is focus on one single person who is very quirky and whose life is under a microscope, and it is fascinating.
It really is, yeah. I really liked it, and a lot of the takes are done in one take. Like you said, cinematography is gorgeous. All around a very, very well put together film. Absolutely deserving of a Best Picture nominee, Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, Best Actress. Every nomination that it received is completely justified, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually wholeheartedly agree with that statement.
Awesome. I'm glad that you enjoyed it, because when I watched it, as I always do, I wonder if he's going to tear this one down. Because it may sound like I like every movie I watch. That's not the case, as we know. But, when I do like a movie, I worry what V's going to think, because it's either going to be a good day or a bad day.
That's so funny, because since we've gotten a bit deeper into this podcast, I think of you every time I watch a movie, too.
Oh, nice. Perfect. At least we're watching the movies together.
Yes.
Metaphorically.
Yes. And sometimes together.
Sometimes together.
So those are the movies we watched this week, and now we are going to turn it up a bit, rev those RPMs, and get into very fast-paced movies.
Yes, we are indeed.
Because this week we picked, based on a true story, racing movies.
Which is another genre that I don't watch often, and not the based on a true story aspect of it, the racing aspect of it. Cars are so far from my repertoire of anything. So both of these movies, the fact that I enjoy them is saying something, since I don't know what I necessarily like about cars.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really good litmus test in general for a movie. If even outsiders can fall in love with a storyline or characters, I think that says a lot. And you picked a doozy this week. You picked one of my all-time favorite racing movies. I'm so glad you like this movie. I'm so glad you put it on our list, and I can't wait for you to dive into it. So feel free to take it away.
All right, sounds good. Pedal to the metal, buckle up, fasten your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go. I chose the 2019 James Mangold directed, Christian Bale, Matt Damon led Ford v. Ferrari. Ladies and gentlemen, what a movie. Good God, what a movie. What a story. Not even just a movie, but what a story. And the fact that both of these guys, Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby, and everybody portrayed on screen existed and were around at one point or another, especially at this point in time in the 60s, when Ford was the heavy hitter of vehicles, personal vehicles, secretary cars, stuff like that. The Mustang is revealed in this movie, and the reason why I chose this movie was because it's one of the maybe 5 racing movies that I've seen that I really liked, and this was a movie that I did see in theaters. I went and saw this with my father-in-law. Yes. At one point, we were hanging out. It was right before Thanksgiving, and my father-in-law said, hey, there's this car show in Phoenix. Do you want to go check it out? And after that, we can go watch this movie, Ford versus Ferrari. I've been interested in it, and all I knew about Ford versus Ferrari was it was Matt Damon and Christian Bale. I hadn't seen a trailer for it. I had no idea what the hell it was about. And I said, well, I might actually be more interested in the car show if we go see the movie first. That way I have a little bit of backstory about some of these vehicles. Well, little did I know that was, of course, the final day of the car show. So when we got out of the movie theater and he looked up to buy tickets, it had finished an hour before we got out of the movie theater, and that was the last day. So I never did get to go to that car show. I still feel bad, but I don't feel as bad because I bought the tickets for the movie and I drove. And when we got on the freeway, my father-in-law said, this is a rental, right? I said, yeah. He goes, punch it. And I punched that shit on the freeway. I think I got to about 85, 90 miles an hour, and then I was getting freaked out, and I was like, okay, I'm going right back down. And that's not going that fast, considering that these guys in this movie portray speeds of up to 200 to 230 miles an hour on jarring turns that just blow me away.
Mm-hmm.
So a little about Ford versus Ferrari. Like I said, James Mangold directed. If we all know who James Mangold is, very, very prominent director. He directed Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon in apparently some Oscar-winning performance from Reese Witherspoon. No idea how that happened. He directed Logan with Hugh Jackman, the R-rated X-Men film, which I thought was badass, and several other films. A great director, maybe not a household name for everybody, but if I see his name, I'm down. And this was another reason to see the movie for me. But this movie is set in the 60s. Ford is wanting to create a vehicle that can win Le Mans, and Le Mans is the 24-hour race that takes place in France. And Ferrari wins every year. So Ford is like, how can we beat Ferrari? How can we beat Ferrari? How can we beat Ferrari? Ford just wants to just be the be-all, end-all again, not just in America, but across the globe, and be like, Ford wins, etc., etc. So Ford enlists Carroll Shelby to build a car for him because he is a car maker now. He was once a racer, but is unfortunately unable to race anymore because his heart is a little bit bad. We all know what that's like, V and myself. So it's definitely a heartbreaking moment, especially in a movie, not necessarily a movie, but in real life when you're told you can't do what you love anymore.
Heartbreaking? Pun intended.
Oh, it actually wasn't intended at all, but I guess now it is.
Perfection.
Makes a little bit of sense. Yeah. So Carroll Shelby has to build this car for Ford to win Le Mans. And he's got a friend, Ken Miles, who is a bit of a hothead. He's a little difficult to get along with, but not necessarily because he's an asshole. He's forward, and he knows vehicles, and he's just a blunt guy, and we all know people like that will just say something not necessarily to get a rise out of you, but they're just being who they are. And that's who Ken Miles was and is, and portrayed so fantastically by Christian Bale in this movie.
Yes, and for our listeners, he reminded me a lot of Roy Kent from Ted Lasso. I know John will not watch that show because of Jason Sudeikis, but for our listeners,
sure won't.
Roy Kent, he's a gruff guy, but he's not a bad guy. And I think that is a good comparison for Ken Miles. Because, yeah, he's rough around the edges, but he's a really good person.
Yes, deep down, Ken Miles wants to, do the right thing, per se, if you will.
Yeah, he's a good dad.
Yeah, right. He's got a son, he's got a wife at home, and he runs a little mechanic shop in East Los Angeles that unfortunately gets taken away from him. And we find out also that Ken Miles was in World War II, and he just loves racing, and racing is his life. But he's unfortunately not been paying his bills, and the IRS seizes his mechanic shop. And he tells his wife that he has to go straight and just get a regular job and forget about the racing thing. Little does he know that Carroll Shelby is developing this car for Ford to win Le Mans. And Carroll Shelby shows up one night and says, hey, take a ride with me. And Miles is already standoffish about it. He goes, nope, told my wife I'm going straight. Don't even try and convince me. It's not going to happen. He says, give me 30 minutes. So he gives him 30 minutes. He drives this car. He falls in love with it. And immediately he's back into it. Without words being spoken, the friendship between Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles knows that Shelby wants him to drive this car and win Le Mans for Ford. And that's one cool thing I like about this movie is the friendship between both of them. When I first saw this movie, I didn't know that they knew each other. And again, I hadn't seen a trailer for this movie, so I did not know anything about either of these people. Didn't know anything about Le Mans. I had no idea what the hell that even was. So when the movie opens up with Carroll Shelby racing Le Mans, I'm like, what the fuck is this? Not necessarily like, well, this is stupid, but I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. We find out that Ken has definitely been offered the job. He's very not sure about it because he told his wife he's not going to do it anymore, but his wife knows that that's what he loves, that's his passion, and that is what will keep him alive, essentially. Like all wives know what the passion of their husband is. And she wants him to live his dream and follow his passion because not only is he a great mechanic and knows vehicles, he's a phenomenal precision driver and a phenomenal racer. And he takes these turns, like I mentioned before, at 2 to 230 miles per hour seamlessly. It looks like just clouds on the freaking racetrack. And the way that these races are shot, even the test races, just so fucking fantastic. You feel like you're there. Like Mangold puts you in the driver's seat. And I know that's said a lot in a lot of reviews, but this is very true for a movie like this. And I think it works also because not only seeing this in theaters, I have the 4K copy of this. I crank it up because I gotta feel that vibration of that muffler going off. I gotta feel those tires screeching. I gotta feel it. And again, I don't know cars. I don't watch racing. I've never watched Formula One. I've never watched any kind of NASCAR of any kind. So this was really one of the very first true racing introductions for me. So it really kind of ignited something that I didn't know I had in me. So after seeing this movie, I definitely had to have the 4K. It was such a fascinating and inspiring story. At one point or another, also, we find out that Enzo Ferrari has done nothing but badmouth Henry Ford II. Enzo calls him, he says he's not Henry Ford, he's Henry Ford II. So, of course, Henry Ford is like, he kind of takes it all in as motivation to be like, all right, motherfucker, you want to talk some shit? I'm going to fuck you up on the racetrack then. And he brings Carroll Shelby into the office. They ignite this whole new plan to build the fastest car, take down Ferrari at Le Mans, and be world champions, and have Ken Miles be the driver.
Come here. See that little building down there? In World War II, 3 out of 5 U.S. bombers rolled off that line. You think Roosevelt beat Hitler? Think again. This isn't the first time Ford Motors has gone to war in Europe. We know how to do more than push paper. And there is one man running this company. You report to him. You understand me?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Carol. Go to war.
Thank you, sir.
However, in the midst of all of this, we have the quote-unquote villain played just fantastically by Josh Lucas. He plays Leo Beebe. And apparently Ford distanced themselves from the production of this movie until it came out because they were not thrilled with how Leo Beebe was being portrayed. And I gotta say, that's okay, I guess. You know, there's gotta be a villain, right? There's always a villain of the story.
Yeah, you know, I've done some research after watching this movie because I saw it in theaters as well, and there's a lot of conflicting reports online about the type of man Leo Beebe was, and maybe how he acted while he was an executive at Ford is different than after he retired at Ford. But, you know, there's a lot of, just like anybody, right? I'm sure people have differing opinions of you and I, right? And
sure.
And that's fine. Yeah. And I agree with you, you know, a movie needs an antagonist, right?
Definitely.
He did it fantastically in this movie. God, I hated him.
Oh, I hated him so much too. And he's such a handsome guy and he's got such a flashy smile. You're like, how can I hate you? But I hate you.
But such a douchey haircut in this movie.
Oh, that haircut was so ridiculous. Yeah. And it, you know, reminded me of my haircut when I started combing my hair in like 4th grade. And I'm like, oh man, I used to like that kind of hairstyle. And I look back at photos, I'm like, what was I fucking thinking? My parents let me leave the house like that?
I had a bowl cut in 4th grade, so you're doing better than me.
Oh, wow.
My parents were so pissed.
Well, I definitely didn't have a bowl cut.
Nope,
but
see, you got one up on me. You're fine.
That's neither here nor there. Yeah. So at one point in the midst of all of this, Leo Beebe really is brought forward because he doesn't want Ken Miles to be the driver of the car at Le Mans. He wants somebody a little bit more cookie cutter, a little bit cleaner, a little bit, not somebody that's going to say whatever comes to their mind. Somebody that'll read a script at the end and, of the race and be like, oh, it was a great race. I love the fact that we won. And instead of like,
Ford.
It was... Yeah, and instead of Ken Miles getting him, they'll be like, oh, this fucking guy almost cut me off, and the fact is I came around him and I fucking won. Like, that's likely, I imagine, how it would have gone down, which would have been great, and which is why I think we need an ESPN channel, uncensored, in my complete and honest opinion. There should be an ESPN network or 2 for every fucking game of every kind of sport where people are like, oh shit, did you fucking see that? Oh my God, this son of a bitch is going fucking crazy. Because how difficult could it be for Al Michaels and John Madden and now dumb-ass Troy Aikman to not just be like, did you fucking see that? They're just standing there going, and the ball is caught by number 32, and he ran it, and he got tackled. I'd be like, look at him go, look at that motherfucker go. Oh, fuck, he just got tackled. God damn it. I thought he was going to go for the big game. I think that would be great.
We need to get you. We're quitting the podcast. John's becoming a sports commentator, and to R-rated sports commentator. We're going to produce it on Showtime. This is going to be amazing.
I think that would be a very good idea. We're going to trademark it and copyright it when we hang up, so nobody takes our idea.
Perfect.
But anyway, yeah. So Leo Beebe, just not into Ken Miles because of how he looks, how he presents himself. And this is one of my favorite moments of the movie. So at one point, Henry Ford II shows up at the test track where they're about to do a little test of this vehicle and have Ken Miles drive it. Leo Beebe's not about it. Carol locks him in his office, which is amazing. And everybody that is working for Carol is in on it. So there's this kid trying to pretend to unlock the door and open the door for Leo Beebe, but he doesn't get it unlocked until Henry Ford is in the car with Carol Shelby. And one of the greatest moments in the movie, he says, "Are you ready?" He goes, "I was born ready. Hit it." And he hits it, and he just takes him on this brutal little test drive of this vehicle. And at the end of it, Henry Ford starts crying like a little baby, saying he wishes his daddy were alive to see this. He had no idea of the implications that come with a vehicle of this power and magnitude, and that they need a proper driver for this car. And that is how he gets the green light for Ken Miles to drive the car at Le Mans. And this has actually happened after they've been to Le Mans already and lost with a cookie cutter driver. Mm-hmm. So this is a year later, and now we get Ken Miles to get his big shot. And after that, it's all just fun and games, really. And we have a moment with Ken Miles and his son. Ken Miles is talking about the perfect lap. He's telling him about how he has markers in his head when he's taking these turns. We have all this stuff with Carol Shelby. We find out that he used to be a test pilot in World War II. He's landing a plane at the Mustang reveal with all the Ford executives. One of the Ford executives is played awesomely. His name is, for real, Lee Iacocca, played by John Berthnall. If anybody knows who he is the Punisher, and he was also in Wolf of Wall Street. He is a character actor that every time he's on screen, he kills it. And I love him in this movie so much because he's just so cool and collected. As an executive, you would think he'd just have that, vein in his forehead. But he's not. He's just a calm, cool, collected guy. And apparently the real Lee Iacocca died just before this movie came out in July of 2019 at 94 years old.
Aww.
Pretty nuts.
I love John Bernthal. He did a great job in this movie. He is fantastic in everything he does. I agree with you. He's super underrated. Every time I see him that he's going to be in a movie, I'm like, oh, now I want to watch it because he's in it. He was in King Richard as one of the tennis coaches. He's in.
That's right. He was the tennis coach.
He was the main tennis coach. He was great in that.
That was a great. I thought King Richard was a damn good flick.
It was.
All the animosity aside of Will Smith, he fucking killed that movie.
The whole movie was great. I agree with you, and I love that it had the blessing and producing credits of the sisters, so we know it was a true story and a true telling. John Bernthal is also in Baby Driver, which is a fantastic movie until the last 20 minutes, I would say. And
it kind of falls apart.
Super cliche, and I was so pissed. And like I said, I just love him and everything he does. I think he's a super underrated actor, as you said.
Definitely. And I mentioned Wolf of Wall Street. He plays the character Brad, and when we're introduced to him, he's trying to get the ketchup at the diner, and we end up finding out that he is one of the hotter heads in the posse of Jordan Belfort and everybody involved in the Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah. Getting back into Ford v Ferrari, Matt Damon, Christian Bale. Main reason Matt Damon took this job was because he wanted to work with Christian Bale. And if you think about it, there's a scene in this movie, and I love this moment, not only because it's hilarious in the movie, but in real life, this did happen. They did kind of have a little bit of a brawl because Ken Miles was a bit heartbroken about how Carol Shelby handled the whole, not actually bringing him to Le Mans the first time. So they get into a bit of a tussle, and there's an 8-part documentary on the 4K of Ford v Ferrari that is extremely fascinating, and I'm really glad that I watched that. I've had this movie since it came out. I've never watched any of the behind the scenes, and this is one of those movies that I wanted to keep it all on the screen. But the fact that it's a true story was another reason why I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it on the podcast. I got to watch this 8-part documentary. I got to see how much authenticity went into this. And we have Peter Miles, who is Ken Miles' son, on camera a lot, talking about how he and Christian Bale spent months together looking at old photographs and listening to old audio recordings of Ken Miles. Christian Bale is a Welsh guy. He is doing a Birmingham accent because that is where Ken Miles is from. Matt Damon is doing a Texas twang with the cowboy hat and the alligator boots because that was Carroll Shelby. So the authenticity is there. Christian Bale also just came off of Vice, where he gained 70 fucking pounds to play Dick Cheney. And Matt Damon found out about this, and he was worried that he was going to get on set and see a fat Christian Bale. And he was 100 pounds lighter because it's Christian Bale, and somehow he can think about losing weight and he'll be fucking skinny again. Oh, and going back to that fight, James Mangold said he had loved nothing more than watching Jason Bourne and Batman fight each other.
Oh, I love it so much.
It was so great.
The chemistry between these two just levels up this movie. I know we talk about this a lot, but it's so, so important. The chemistry between these two friends elevates this movie to being Oscar-worthy. I was so happy with the two of them together, and that fight is hilarious, and it's this classic friend fight, and you can see it, and it's shot so well because they're fighting and wrestling on the ground, and Christian Bale had dropped a bag of groceries when they started fighting, and Matt Damon almost picks up this can of like vegetables or something, but he drops it and then grabs a loaf of bread instead and just starts wailing on Christian Bale with a loaf of bread, because obviously the bread's not going to hurt him. He knew that the can would. It's like this classic just friend brawl, right? I loved it so much.
So funny. And Ken Miles' wife comes out of the house because this is happening right in front of the house, and she pulls up a lawn chair and just watches the fight with her magazine. And at the end of it, Miles yells out to his wife about how he wants a fizzy pop soda, and she yells over to Carol, she's like, "Would you like one too?" And Ken Miles is like, "No, he doesn't want anything. Don't worry about him. He's an asshole. None for him." Thought it was so funny. And his wife was played by Catriona Balfe. If I am saying that incorrectly, I apologize. She is very well known for the show Outlander. I've never seen it, but I know that a lot of people are big fans. She's also in the Best Picture nominee from last year, directed by Kenneth Branagh, Belfast, which was a phenomenal film. If anybody saw that one, that was the only Best Picture movie nomination of last year that brought me to a watery tear moment towards like the last 5 minutes of that movie. So good. She was also in Super 8. She plays Elizabeth Lamb, and Super 8 is a great science fiction movie directed by J.J. Abrams about kids making movies and utilizing a train wreck to their advantage to make their movies. And I could go on and on about Super 8, but we're not here to talk about that. So good.
And who thought that Matt Damon in a cowboy hat with a Texas accent was something we always needed, but never knew we wanted?
I guess that's true, yeah. I can't help but love watching him in that role. He's so good. Everybody's so good. There's so much authenticity in this movie. And that's the other thing, going down to the production design, the vehicles, the picture cars, all of this stuff, and even the visual effects, which is very minimal. The use of visual effects in this movie is actually done very well. The tracks are all practical tracks that are being raced on. And the Le Mans track is actually a couple of different tracks all over the world, from France, Italy, Southern California, and Florida. And apparently in Florida there's a 24-hour Daytona race as well, which I had no idea existed. So we see that race go down, which is awesome. And all of the practice races and test drives of this vehicle are very fascinating. People they take it so seriously, and it's like it's their drug. You know, they want that, as Tom Cruise has said before, that need for speed. And it's intense to watch because I've never felt that for driving. I've never thought that about vehicles at all. I have that about other things, but seeing it portrayed this way was completely refreshing to me because, you know, it not only is it like, I'm the best driver around, it's just like, no, I want to be the best driver around, and I want to drive the best car there is to show people that I am the best driver around, and that's what Ken Miles was all about.
Yes, absolutely. I am, as many people know, a retired racer. And in fact, the very first scene of this movie is at Willow Springs Raceway, which is a real track outside of Palmdale. It's where I started my racing career. I raced there for years. And so when they're all racing there and Christian Bale's going around the track, I was like, oh yeah, that's turn 3. Okay, that's turn 4. And it was really fun to see that again. And they did a great job with filming at that location. And this is, as you say, this is such an authentic movie. He is coming around one turn in that first scene of the movie, and he says, "Hey Dan, so I'm going to pass you in the next turn." And
Yeah.
that's Dan Gurney, a legend of racing, who I've actually had the pleasure of meeting and talking to before he passed away. But yeah, I mean,
that's awesome.
This movie does such a great job telling this real life story. And I agree, racing was a big passion of mine for a long time. It helped me clear my head. As someone with ADD, it was one of the few hobbies that I have where I had to have a singular focus because it takes so much because you're going so fast. And, his conversation with his son about markers and planning out a lap, that's exactly how you do it as a racer. You have a braking point, you have a turn-in point, you have an apex point. Like, you map out the track. And when he's talking about the markers, it's so accurate. I loved that about the movie.
Oh, that's awesome. Hell yeah. There was a lot of practicality, as we've mentioned, with this movie, and really goes down to the locations, too. This was shot in France, Florida, Italy, and it wasn't necessarily shot at the Enzo Ferrari factory, but they did shoot at the mansion that Enzo Ferrari owned, and that was pretty badass, I gotta say. The fact that that was not somewhere in Calabasas, California. They actually went to find this, they went to this house in Italy where Enzo Ferrari used to shack up, and very, very, a gorgeous landscape, of course, Italy, of all places. I've never been to Italy, but I'm sure it's gorgeous.
Yes, I can actually tell you that location, that exterior location that they shot when they had that meeting with Enzo Ferrari is a real place. It is the original location of the factory and where he used to live. I've actually been there and stood in that same location because I visited the Ferrari factory in Italy when I went to Italy a few years ago. And it was so awesome to see that in the movie. I was like, oh my God, I've been there, and it's actually, they filmed at the real place and not some stupid set.
Yeah, that's fucking cool.
Not one of the Kardashian houses in Calabasas.
Yeah, exactly. Which, for those that watch the Kardashians, the exterior of the Kardashian house is in the Hollywood Hills, and the interior is on a soundstage.
Oh no, you just shattered the illusion of reality TV.
Fuck the Kardashians.
That's so hard.
And fuck reality TV.
Oh, you've worked on The Bachelor before, haven't you?
I worked on a version of The Bachelor several years ago for 2 weeks until I picked up my computer and walked the fuck off of that set. That was one of the most horrendous experiences of my life.
I bet. Oh my God.
Yeah, don't do reality TV, people. The money's there, but your life is not. Do not ever do reality TV.
Selling your soul, right?
Pretty much. And I like, one of the main reasons why I was excited about this episode is because I know of your racing past, and I always watched you leave set on your motorcycle and disappear as fast as fucking lightning. And it was like, how is V doing that? And I want to go out to that track outside of Lancaster and have you drive me on a test track like Shelby did with Ford, because I guarantee you at the end I would be crying too. I'd be so terrified
to take you.
Oh yeah, no, I want it. I want to get on the back of your bike too, and just I'll have my eyes closed majority of the time, but I want to feel that wind in my hair. Although I'll likely wear a helmet because I'm on blood thinners. So I'm not Tom Cruise. I can't just get on a bike and be like, I'm Tom Cruise. Here I come at 60 years old, and I'm just going to do every stunt practically, and everybody's going to love it.
Right.
Which was another really cool thing, talking about practical effects. Christian Bale did a lot of his own stunt driving in this movie, which is fucking awesome. He went to the Bondurant High Performance Driving School, and he ended up finding out that the founder of the school was a friend of Ken Miles, and Bale also heard stories of the 60s racing scene, and his instructor and film stunt coordinator, Roger Nagel, later said that Christian Bale was the best actor they have ever trained in precision driving. And what a praise for Christian Bale.
Wow.
I mean, the guy he's the Midas touch. If he's in a movie, it's likely to be a fucking winner.
That's really impressive because I know Michael Fassbender is working on his racing career right now. He's not great. He's not terrible, but he certainly doesn't have that aggressiveness that you need to, shoot through a gap in cars or what have you. I know that Patrick Dempsey is a big race car driver. He actually owns his own team and works with Porsche extensively. Wow. Yeah. And Brad Pitt went to the racing school that I used to be a part of for motorcycles. Learned how to race bikes out there, which was really cool. So yeah, I mean, I know that there are a lot of racers, and of course, as you mentioned, Tom Cruise, he raced a old Formula One car out at Willow Springs one time, and Red Bull sponsored it, and they had this whole video about it, which was pretty cool.
No shit, that's crazy. Tom fucking Cruise.
Of course.
And during production, which was only, now get this, V, 67 days of production on Ford vs. Ferrari, which is mind-boggling to think because of all of the racing sequences in this movie and the test driving sequences and all of the practicality of this movie is mind-boggling to think that it took 2 months and 7 days to make this freaking movie.
That's insane.
I know. And a mutual friend of ours, Suzanne Robertson, I think she went by Scoos at camp. I haven't been to the camp in a while. But she ended up doing a lot of visual effects on this film and sent me several photos of when she was doing visual effects on this movie. And the cool thing about the visual effects, as we've mentioned, the practical effects in this movie were the tracks. All of the audience members and crowd sequences were all done digitally. And it's pretty nuts because it's very convincing. Even in theaters, it wasn't like, oh, that's digital. No, it was very, very convincing visual effects. So round of applause for Suzanne Roberts working on that one. And she also worked on one of your favorite ones, V, out of the DC Universe, Justice League. She did visual effects on that one. I went and saw it in theaters to support, and I saw her name in the credits, and I was very, very excited. So awesome stuff on that, Suzanne. Always killing it in the entertainment industry. Good stuff, good stuff. This movie, as we've talked about, is definitely about friendship, cherishing that friendship and nurturing that friendship and keeping it going and supporting each other and being there for one another. Not just friendship, but family as well. And I really liked that as an underlying plot point for the movie was that his wife was very supportive, his son was very supportive. Everybody wanted Ken Miles to race, and so did Ken Miles. So the fact that he had everybody behind him, pushing him forward was really awesome. And I really like that about this film in particular.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The underlying themes of loyalty and like you said, friendship and family, wholeheartedly agree. But again, levels up this movie to being something beyond just racing.
Exactly. Yes. I think this might be my favorite piece of trivia beyond all of the other awesome pieces of trivia with Ford v. Ferrari, but 50 years after the events of Ford v. Ferrari, Ford went and beat Ferrari at Le Mans again 50 years after the events of Ford v. Ferrari. So that's pretty badass.
Oh, that is badass.
Hells yeah.
And that GT40 that they built is one of my all-time favorite sports cars.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, it is. It's a badass car. I don't know anything about what's under the hood, but it does look cool. Ford vs. Ferrari was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, which is awesome. I was very excited to see that it got a Best Picture nominee. It also got a Best Film Editing, Best Sound Editing, and Sound Mixing nomination. It won for Best Film Editing and for Sound Editing. And Ford v. Ferrari was the last film at the Academy Awards to win Best Sound Editing before the Academy decided to combine Best Sound Editing and Sound Mixing together as one award, which is bullshit, in my opinion. They are two complete jobs, 2 completely different jobs, and you're diminishing the quality of work when you do it that way, Academy, in my opinion. So, and we still need a stunt category, for fuck's sake.
Yes, we do, and definitely need more acknowledgement of all of the people behind the scenes. I know that, the best actor, the best director, the best picture category is what brings an audience in to actually watch the televising of the awards, but all of these people behind the scenes who work their asses off, who aren't paid millions of dollars, certainly deserve acknowledgement, so I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Definitely. It's still a thing, and I hope one day we won't have to necessarily talk like this about it anymore because it should just be a category. And a little bit more about the production of this movie and early development. This movie was in development for about 10 years. Michael Mann was attached to direct it at Fox. He had projected the budget to be $100 million plus. Fox didn't want to do it for $100 million plus. He also had Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise attached to this movie. I wonder who was going to play who. Pretty sure it's obvious.
Hated each other from Interview with the Vampire, though. How do you even get them both interested?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. Somehow it did. Money talks, right?
Good point.
So in that 10 years of development, finally James Mangold was able to get his hands on it. He came up with a budget that was workable for the studio, and the studio was all up in arms about it being $100+ million, but James Mangold was able to shave off a couple million and bring it in at a budget of $97.6 million to make this movie.
And then they were happy with it?
I guess, they seemed to be like, oh, you know what, that's a good enough number. We can spend that. On opening weekend, it brought in $31.4 million here in the U.S. opening weekend. U.S. gross was $117.6 million, so $20 million more than the budget. Worldwide take in the box office was $225.5 million, and it definitely did great worldwide. Again, it turned me on to a sport that I knew nothing about. It gave me knowledge about people I had no idea existed. It gave me knowledge on Ford, on how they upped their game and, became another footprint in the world of racing, and not just the world of racing, the world of automobiles. And it's just a great fucking movie. It's 2.5 hours long. It flies by, it speeds by, excuse me, and at 230 miles an hour. And it's just an all-around wonderful movie. The soundtrack is great. It's beautifully shot by Faden Papa Michael. He has been James Mangold's cinematographer for the last several decades, and just a couple of notable projects that Faden Papa Michael has DP'd. He did The Trial of the Chicago 7, which was the HBO film, which I thought was a great fucking movie. He did Ford versus Ferrari, which we're talking about. He did Downsizing, which with Alexander Payne. He did The Monuments Men. He did Nebraska. He did This Is 40, The Descendants, Night and Day with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, which I have not seen since theaters. And that is a James Mangold written and directed film, and I remember liking that movie quite a bit.
It's so fun. It's a fun film.
It was a lot of fun. And as is Ford v Ferrari, there's a lot of really funny moments. There's a lot of very intense moments. And again, for 2019, getting a Best Picture nominee, just fantastic. And we've done the year 2019 before, so we won't get too deep into the game. But V, you may remember the Best Picture, the highest grossing film of 2019, I imagine you do.
I remember 2018 being Black Panther. So is 2019 an Avenger movie?
It could be.
Yeah, is it Endgame?
It was Endgame for 2019 highest grossing film, which is still the number 2 highest grossing film, but not for long, because Avatar: The Way of Water is swimming up its back right now to take the second highest grossing film spot of all time. James Cameron, box office king, ladies and gentlemen. So that is Ford v Ferrari. 2019, James Mangold directed, starring Matt Damon, Christian Bale as Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles. Great fucking movie all around, and I can't wait to get into your movie, V.
Great movie all around. I'm so happy you picked it. I'm so happy you enjoyed it. And I really hope that some of our audience are now introduced to this phenomenal movie.
I hope so. Definitely give it a shot. You can watch it on Hulu right now. I have said, I watched my 4K copy of it because I had to have it. And that's saying something for me to run out and buy a racing movie, because I couldn't care less, but I cared enough, and I want to watch this movie over and over.
And thank you for using the proper term of couldn't care less. People saying I could care less drives me crazy.
Right? I know. It's nuts. So nuts. So, V, I think we can buckle up and get even crazier with your pick. What do you think?
Yes, I agree, and it is crazier. It also takes place about 10 years later than your movie.
Yes, indeed it does. And just for the audience, our listeners to know, this was actually not V's first choice. I have watched 2 movies this week for V. This was one of them, and the original one, I'm sure our listeners knew, was a documentary called Senna, which was a great fucking movie, and I'm glad that I watched that too. And it was another one that when it ended, I was like, good Lord, I might be into racing now, so I might watch some racing. Who knows? We'll see after we discuss your pick.
Yay! Okay, yes. And yes, John has done me several solids this week, including watching an extra movie. So I'm very, very relieved to hear that he actually liked both of my picks, so he's not super pissed at me.
Not at all.
And you're right. As any of our listeners from last week know, I originally said I was going to pick Senna, the documentary, which is a fantastic movie. Highly recommend it for anybody interested in Formula One history, anyone who watches the Drive to Survive series on Netflix. And in fact, anyone who's a fan of that series on Netflix, definitely give both of our movies this week a shot, because it's right up that alley.
Drive to Survive? Maybe I should give that one a shot.
Yeah, it's a very fun behind-the-scenes show that interviews all the Formula One racers and follows each season of Formula One to the championship, which is pretty cool. And Senna is a great documentary. It's one of my all-time favorite documentaries. There were a couple reasons why I decided to switch it up. First of all, Rush takes place 10 years earlier than Senna, which is actually 10 years after Ford v Ferrari. So Ford v Ferrari takes place in 1966. Rush takes place in 1976. And Senna takes place in the 80s and 90s. So I thought the progression was a little bit better, especially since they're all based on true stories.
Hell yeah.
But beyond that, and more importantly, is that for this podcast, we really like to discuss trivia, behind-the-scenes stories, little tidbits about a movie that most viewers don't get just by watching the movie. And with a documentary, there isn't any trivia because it's a documentary, right? Like, what trivia am I going to share? And so
it's all trivia.
Exactly. And so that's why I decided to change it, though. For anyone who's interested, Senna is a fantastic documentary. It's on YouTube. And there's also another great documentary about a legendary Formula One racer called Schumacher, which is now on Netflix.
Oh.
And
not Joel Schumacher.
No, that would be Michael Schumacher.
Batman Forever. Yes. Michael Schumacher. Got it.
Yes,
no relation.
No relation. It would be Michael Schumacher. And he was a racer in the mid to late 90s. So that is, again, in terms of progression, that would be the last one to watch. And it's a great documentary as well. And I highly recommend it.
I will have to check it out.
But we are not talking about those movies today. We are talking about my latest pick, one that John did watch for me, which thank you again. It is called Rush. It is a Ron Howard directed movie based on a true story that takes place in 1976. It came out in 2013, and it stars Chris Hemsworth and Daniel Brawl. This is a movie that starts off kind of in the middle of the story. So we open up and it's 1976 in the middle of the Formula One season, and there is a race at the Nuremberg Ring in Germany. This racetrack is notorious for being a killer. This is an extremely dangerous track. They don't race at it anymore.
Oh, wow.
And the announcer is voicing over this storyline about how British driver James Hunt, played by Chris Hemsworth, and Austrian driver Niki Lauda, played by Daniel Brawl, have been competing for this championship and are neck and neck in this championship this year. And you very quickly, as an audience member, recognize that this is a big rivalry and it's very intense. And before the race starts, the movie flashes back about 6 years.
Oh, yes.
And I thought it was a great decision by Ron Howard and the screenwriter to really create some stakes very quickly for the audience so they care about this exposition that's about to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the story building that's about to happen, because we go back to 1970, and for racing, Formula One is the top premier racing class in the entire world. Only 20 drivers are ever driving at Formula One at one time. This is incredibly
20,
elite.
that's it?
That's it. It's an incredibly elite sport. And
it looks like so much more cars on the track, I guess.
I know, right? And
yeah.
In order to get into Formula One, you start with Formula 3, and then you build up to Formula 2, and then Formula 1 is the best. And so that's the progression of the racing series that you do. So we're back in 1970. This is Formula 3. It's very obvious very quickly that Chris Hemsworth's character, James Hunt, and Daniel Brawl's character, Niki Lauda, have just started their racing career. They're starting to get into it. They're very scrappy. They're privateers. You know, they work out of a van and things like that. And immediately they hate each other.
Right away. They look at each other and they're like, fuck off.
Right? You're an asshole. They say that to each other a lot in this movie.
Yeah, they do.
And it makes sense because Chris Hemsworth plays perfectly, by the way, this charismatic, party-going playboy who everybody loves instantly.
Yeah, he does. I definitely loved him right away.
Right.
And the cool thing about Chris Hemsworth is everybody would know him most definitely as Thor, but I've seen him in other movies, and he's good.
He's a great actor. I agree. And if anybody gives him a chance outside of Marvel, not to say that Marvel's bad, but he just has a little bit more range in other movies. He popped on the screen in the 2009 movie Star Trek, where he plays James T. Kirk's father for the first 5 minutes of the movie before he's unceremoniously killed off.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Spoiler alert. Sorry, everybody.
Sorry, everybody.
If you haven't seen it by now, it is almost 20 years old, so get to it. I actually ended up working on the trailers for that Star Trek and didn't see the opening of that movie, didn't even see it in theaters, and I watched that Star Trek in my studio apartment in North Hollywood on a 13-inch tube television.
Oh.
And I had it up to like 53 because I think the volume went to 60. So I thought I had like a killer TV sound system. Of course, I knew I didn't, but in my little apartment, it really worked out, and I loved that opening sequence of that movie. So badass and so intense.
Yes, that whole movie series, I think, is very good. I wish they would make more of them, and it is entirely blasphemous that you did not see that in theaters and saw it on your piece of shit TV in your studio apartment instead.
I know. I saw Into Darkness in theaters, though. I went when that was in theaters, and I loved that one. I didn't see Beyond, but I saw it at home, and I didn't hate Beyond, but it wasn't my favorite.
Yeah.
It was okay. It was fine. Good special effects, definitely.
I think they're overhated movies, number 2 and 3. I think they're pretty good.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And
Into Darkness is dragged, but it's so great.
Yeah, and I would like to say that being a huge trailer fan, I definitely rank and rate trailers as I watch them. Star Trek trailers were fantastic, so I want to congratulate you and say very good job, because anybody who's interested, go on YouTube, watch the original trailers for the Star Trek that came in 2009. Those were great.
Yeah. I didn't really necessarily do a lot of the editing. I did the finishing editing, so I added the credits at the end. I added some of the sound bites and transitions here and there after they were sent down to that part of the studio. But overall, I definitely had my hand involved, and I'm thank you for saying that they were good, because at the end of trailers you don't get like cut by or
you don't get
any of
credits.
that stuff. So nobody knows who cuts these trailers. They think the studio does it. Well, to an extent they do, but there is still somebody putting those clips on the timeline and getting you that 2.5 minute movie that makes you want to see the 2.5 hour movie.
Yeah, and if anybody's seen The Holiday, which was John's pick back in December, they'll know a little bit more about cutting trailers, because that's what Cameron Diaz did in that movie.
She cut 75 trailers that year, Amanda.
Yeah. But getting back to Chris Hemsworth, he is also
Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, in Snow White and the Huntsman. He did a great job.
Yeah.
So did Charlize Theron. There was another casting choice that was terrible that we're not going to talk about. And
terrible.
He's also extremely funny. I know a lot of people hate this movie, but I really enjoyed Ghostbusters. I thought he was really funny in it.
Oh yeah, wow. I saw it one time.
Yeah.
And now I remember him being in it. I like Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jordan. I'm kind of over Melissa McCarthy at this point, but I'm not going to not watch a movie if she's in it. And who was the other one? Oh, Kristen Wiig. Kristen Wiig, always enjoyable to watch. I still think she was miscast in The Martian, but that's just, I think maybe I might be the only one that feels that way.
Oh, interesting take. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, it was. She can
be an uptight businesswoman. I could see it.
Yeah, she can. It was fine. It was just one of those moments she walked on the screen like, Kristen Wiig. Huh.
Yeah. Well, it's just because you always think of her as SNL and being silly, so it's just
Bridesmaids, definitely.
Yeah, it's just a paradigm shift when you see her in a serious role, right?
Or for those that have been listening since day one, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which he's great in.
That's right.
Which was your pick for episode 1.
Episode 1.
And here we are at 45.
The other star of this movie is Daniel Brahl. He is German, but plays an Austrian named Niki Lauda, who I have always been a big fan of. He was a consultant for my favorite racing team and my favorite racer, Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton races for that team, and Niki Lauda was a consultant for many years with them. And so
very cool.
I've seen him in recent times, and so watching this movie about him was really awesome. And Daniel Brahl does a great job. He embodies Niki Lauda so well. The side-by-side pictures of the two of them is insane, and we are going to post them on social media because they did such a great job with him. And
we should do that with Ford v Ferrari too. They actually look, they cast pretty close to actual looks, which is awesome.
Whenever we do biopics based on true stories, we should post side-by-side photos. Actually, that's a really great idea.
Yeah, we should.
Cool. Okay, we're going to do that. And Daniel Brahl was most recently in All Quiet on the Western Front, the BAFTA-winning, Oscar-nominated, incredible masterpiece that is All Quiet on the Western Front that came out last year. He plays a German diplomat in that movie. He also, funny enough, is in the Marvel Universe. He is in one of the films that both John and I really don't like.
Oh, really? Which one?
He's in
there's a lot of those for me.
Yeah, that's true.
He's in Catwoman?
No, shut up.
Oh.
He's in Captain America: Civil War.
Oh, yeah.
He's the villain in that movie, and it was such a terrible script. So
I don't even remember it. That's how bad it was.
Exactly. So that was one of the few Marvel movies that Thor was not in, actually. So they hadn't played in a movie together before this, but still interesting they were in the same universe. He also is in Inglourious Bastards. He plays Frederick Zoller in that movie.
Oh, damn. Hell yeah.
And,
I love Inglourious Bastards.
And he's great in everything he does. I really enjoyed him in The Alienist with Dakota Fanning and Luke Evans, if anybody's watched that show that was on for a few seasons.
I watched a few episodes. I did not continue with it.
It's intense, so it makes sense. No worries.
Okay.
So he plays Niki Lauda, who is the complete opposite to James Hunt as a racer. He's methodical. He's quiet. He doesn't party. He goes to bed on time. He's very technical with the machines. And he is very blunt and kind of stuffy. And so they immediately are opposites, just butting heads. And they start off in Formula 3 and then grow into Formula 1 together. And the whole entire time there's this rivalry and just really rubbing each other the wrong way.
Congratulations. Thank you. Marlene, it's home. Well, with a car like that, the rest of us never really stood a chance, did we?
Maybe the fact the car is so good has something to do with me.
Oh, come on, Nicky. You're in a Ferrari. I'm in a Hesketh. Equal terms, the way it was in Formula 3, I'd beat you and you know it.
Never. You might win one race, maybe two, because you're aggressive. But in the long run, over the course of a season, no chance.
Right, why is that?
Because to be a champion, it takes more than just being quick. It's the whole picture.
Ah.
You're just the charger and the party guy. That's why everybody likes you.
Now try saying that and tell me you're not jealous.
Why would I be jealous? Well, think about it. All that affection, all those smiles, is a sign of their disrespect.
Oh.
They don't fear you. Whereas compare that to me.
Yes, compared to you, whom no one likes.
Right?
Not even his own teammates.
Right. Because I'm a serious guy. I go to bed early, I look after myself, look after my car.
Yes, you're very well behaved.
Go to work, kick ass, and then after the race I go home. Instead of going to bars and talk all this bullshit with all these assholes.
Assholes.
You should go home often too. I heard you got married?
Yes, I did.
So where's she? His mysterious wife.
In New York, working.
Oh. No, I've never seen her with her once.
No. Well, maybe that's because you're always at home. On your own, looking after yourself, being a good little boy.
Yeah, I liked that. And it's interesting because Niki Lauda very much reminded me of Ken Miles.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, he certainly wasn't as funny.
Definitely not as funny.
But
no.
was blunt.
A little
That's
bit more
true.
serious, but yeah.
Yeah.
They had some personality traits that were similar to each other.
Absolutely. And there's even a moment in this movie is Niki Lauda's like, why am I the asshole? I'm just being honest. You know,
Right. I like that, yeah.
And so they go through this and are continuing to be rivals, and they get to this point where they're at the Nuremberg Ring. They're both in Formula 1 on manufacturing teams, very elite racing, very high pressure, lots of stakes. And they're at this track and it's raining. And there's a driver meeting where it's discussed, hey, should we cancel this race? Niki Lauda is, because he's so methodical, because he's so technical, he says, this track is normally extremely dangerous. With the rain, it's untenable. We should cancel this race. And of course, James Hunt is in the corner going, what? Stop being such a coward. Like, we all want to race, and really eggs everybody on and really kind of sways the room. And so the rest of the drivers are like, nah, let's race. Let's do it. Well,
right.
Unfortunately, the race goes on as planned, and Niki Lauda gets in a horrific accident. And,
that's right. Yeah, that was... Oof.
And unfortunately is trapped in his car, and the car is on fire. And he is burned over a lot of his extremities, including his hands, his face, his head, and he breathes in a lot of this superheated, gasoline-filled air and damages his lungs.
Ugh, yeah. Ugh.
And so cut to the hospital after this horrific accident. And a trigger warning for our audience, it's not super graphic, it's just really intense. And because there are skin grafts, there are vacuuming out his damaged lungs, and it's, you really cringe, and I kind of went in on myself with my chest going like, oh fuck, when I watched this, right?
Yeah. That was really brutal. It looked like that was done practically too. I don't know if he had that bar down his throat, but it was very convincing.
It was. And we're now following Nicky while he is convalescing in the hospital, and you see him watching James Hunt still racing, winning these other races that are on the schedule. And it's starting to motivate him. And he's like, no, keep going. Keep vacuuming out my lungs. I'm going to get better.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And he gets so determined, and he gets to a point where he's trying to put his helmet on when he has bandages on. And it's so excruciating to watch because you know how much pain he must be in. And
oh, hell yeah.
Similar to your movie, actually, where you were talking about his wife and his son supporting Ken Miles.
Mm-hmm.
Nicky Lauda's wife walks in the hospital room when he's trying on this helmet, and she looks, obviously very concerned. And he turns to her and he says, "If you love me, you won't say a word."
Yeah.
And she nods and walks away.
Very intense moment.
Yeah. And it was just really beautiful to see that she can still support him, even though she knows what it's costing him, or what it could cost him even more.
Yeah, that was a good moment. I like that. Family again.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And so Nicky Lauda actually only missed 40 days of racing, which is insane when you think this is 1976. They're doing what they can. He has skin grafts, he has damaged lungs, and had been in a coma. He only missed 2 races on the schedule.
That's it?
Yeah, isn't that insane?
That is pretty nuts. I'm surprised to hear that. It felt like longer than that, or meant more races than that.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and that's my only just tiny critique about this movie, is that you don't really get a good sense of time in this film, and I think they could have done a little bit better job, because it does seem like James Hunt keeps winning races over and over again as he's watching it on the TV to motivate him, and it's a little bit of a montage, and so you think like, oh, he's been winning for a while, and so when he comes back and they're like, oh, they're still vying for the championship, you're like, well, how the hell he's missed a bunch of races? How is this possible? He's missed half the season. But in reality, in real life, he only missed 2 races and he got back out there, which is just so ballsy.
That's so crazy that it was 2 races. And I guess in a way it makes sense also because of how spread out each location might have been, if I'm getting that correct.
Yeah, you are absolutely correct, because Formula One takes place all over the world, and they had to ship everything to each country in order to race. And so it takes a long time. They go from Germany to Sao Paulo, Brazil, to Japan. So they're all over the world, which is one of the reasons why races are usually a couple weeks apart.
Gotcha. I guess that makes sense. I never think about that, but now that I'm thinking about it, when I watched Cars the first time after Lightning McQueen wins his first race in the beginning of the first movie, he gets in the back of his big rig and he drives the cross country and he sleeps while his driver is driving. Yeah. So it's definitely a play on what really does happen.
Yeah. And
I mean, the cars aren't alive, but you know what I mean.
You mean they're not voiced by Owen Wilson?
Wow. No, they're not.
Okay.
Thank God for that.
Thank God for that. And as I said, Daniel Brahl really embodies Nicky Lauda in this film, and the rest of the movie is him back at racing, the rivalry with James Hunt, and their fight for the Formula One championship in 1976.
Fucking A.
Daniel Brahl actually wore a dental piece to mimic Nicky Lauda's famous overbite. And this is how you use a prosthetic properly in a movie that isn't going to distract the audience, unlike Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, so distracting.
It was. And I can tell you that Nicky Lauda watched this film and said, holy shit, that's me. And so
no way.
He loved the portrayal of this movie. He thought Daniel Brahl did a great job. He and Daniel spent many months together. He really invested a lot of time becoming Nicky Lauda. And even the writer of this movie, Peter Morgan, spent 60 dinners with Nicky Lauda.
60?
Yeah. And
wow.
Nicky, after watching the movie, said, Everything about this was absolutely factual. The only thing they embellished a little bit was our rivalry. We actually did become very good friends. We were fierce competitors and both really wanted to win championships. But other than a little bit of embellishment for drama about them kind of hating each other, he said everything else in this movie was absolutely factual.
That's crazy. That's pretty cool. I'm glad to hear that, because you never know like what liberties are going to be taken, you know. But it sounds like they took a few liberties to make it a little bit more of an intense rivalry. But you got to have the drama, you know, suck people in a little bit more.
Exactly. And there are some pretty good supporting actors in this movie. First of all, Olivia Wilde is in this movie.
Oh, yes.
She plays James Hunt's wife. She, of course, directed Don't Worry, Darling last year. She also directed Booksmart. I first saw her actually in one of my early picks, The Girl Next Door. She had a bit part in that. But then really recognized her and noticed her in House, the TV show with Hugh Laurie.
Interesting.
She was also in Tron Legacy, which we're both fans of.
Yeah, Tron Legacy's badass.
And Cowboys and Aliens, which everybody agrees on is terrible.
I don't even remember her in that.
Right?
I remember Olivia Wilde, because I know I've talked about this story before, but I have had the pleasure of working with her. She's a very, very nice woman. I ran into her at Griffith Park at one point, too. I think she was fine in this movie, but her accent was not fine in this movie.
That's fair. American doing British accent usually isn't a recipe for success.
No, not really. And that's fine. You know, they're not always going to be good. Kind of like with my take on Bryce Dallas Howard in Rocket Man. I did not think that she did a great accent. She was good in the movie, but the accent was distracting. And I know you have a problem with accents, and you didn't seem to have a problem with that one. I wonder if you have a problem with this one.
I don't actually. I don't know why, but
weird.
I didn't have a problem with Bryce Dallas Howard's accent or Olivia Wilde's accent in this movie, but probably because they're bit parts and not main actors, maybe? Maybe that's why.
Maybe. I mean, all opinions are valid, except if you think those two can do a British accent.
No, I don't think either one can do a British accent. I agree with you.
Okay.
No,
Gotcha,
I agree. Neither of them can do British accents.
Nothing against you ladies, if ever you listen. It wasn't as convincing as I thought it would be.
Agreed. And the other supporting actor that I want to talk about is Natalie Dormer. She plays one of James Hunt's girlfriends in this movie. She was Anne Boleyn in The Tudors, the TV show on Showtime. She was also in Game of Thrones as Marjorie Tyrell. She was the one who initially was going to marry Joffrey Baratheon until the Purple Wedding.
Thank God she didn't.
Thank God she didn't. And she also plays Cressida, the film director in the last two Hunger Games movies.
Oh, I didn't bother with those ones, but I remember her in Game of Thrones, most definitely.
Yes. And
I haven't seen The Tudors.
It walked so Game of Thrones could run. It was
I see.
Very, very X-rated.
Yes, of course.
And very medieval, so it led perfectly into Game of Thrones.
Definitely.
And Peter Morgan, as I mentioned, was the writer on this movie. The one I mentioned had met with Niki Lauda. And he has actually written some really good movies. He is the creator and writer of The Crown, the show on Netflix. First couple seasons were good, but I stopped watching it.
I've never seen an episode. My wife watched it. She liked it.
Okay.
I don't know if she's kept up with it, though.
Funny enough, he wrote the story, not the script, but the story to Bohemian Rhapsody. So that's kind of funny. So we just talked about it. He wrote Frost Nixon, which is where he met Ron Howard.
Oh, cool. I never saw that one, but I wanted to. Frank Langella and Martin Sheen, I think. Or Michael Sheen.
Michael Sheen. Yep, exactly.
Michael Sheen. I get them confused.
Two very different people, that's for sure. But I do get them
only
confused
by name.
Too.
If I saw them both, I'd likely be.
No,
I know Michael Sheen as Lucian in the Underworld movies, and I always thought that he was such a badass.
I loved him in Lucian and the Underworld movies, but
yeah. So good.
I always thought the Underworld movies, the set must have been so awkward because he was married to Kate Beckinsale, and then she hooks up with the director of that movie, and then they go on to make another movie all together. And I'm like, God, that must have been really awkward.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah. But I guess they're on really good terms, and they raise a daughter together, so everybody acted like an adult afterwards, which is good.
I've worked with Len Wiseman. I did the pilot of Lucifer with him, and he is a badass guy.
Nice.
For sure.
That's awesome. Oh God, I love that show.
Yeah, Lucifer was good. Being on the pilot was awesome, and then I got to get on seasons 3, 4, and 5 because seasons 1 and 2 were shot in Vancouver. We did the pilot in Los Angeles, and then they were like, "Yeah, you know what? Fuck all you that did the pilot. We're going to Vancouver.
It'll be cheaper."
They were like, "Oh, hey guys, sorry about that. Let's bring you all back for seasons 3 through 5."
That's right.
Pretty much what it felt like.
Oh, that's how it goes.
But yeah, still a lot of fucking fun. An absolute blast of a show to be on. I was very grateful for that one.
Oh, I love it. I love that you worked on that show. I'm glad you had a good time too.
Hell yeah. I got to show you photos from that set. I got to find them. I have so many.
Yeah, you do. God. Especially because I love Tom Ellis.
Yeah, who doesn't? He's a cool dude. Yeah. I danced with him a lot. He's a big dancer. So we would dance on set often. And sing the Grease soundtrack of all things. Luckily there was no karaoke machine. It just happened that we would always sing Tell Me More, Tell Me More.
Aw, I love it.
Yeah, it was kind of dumb.
No, I love it.
But no, Tom Ellis is awesome. He's great.
It's good to know. And a couple more Peter Morgan credits, just because I want to give him credit. He's a very good writer. He wrote The Queen with Helen Mirren, which was a very good movie. And he also wrote The Last King of Scotland, which you're a fan of.
Oh, yeah, that is a brutal movie.
Brutal movie.
James McAvoy and
good movie,
Forrest
though.
Whitaker.
Mm-hmm,
good movie, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ron Howard directed this movie. Now, I have picked him once before for our episode a few moons ago, Willow.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Episode 19. He is an iconic director. He has directed Splash, Cocoon, Backdraft, Far and Away, Apollo 13, A Beautiful Mind, Cinderella Man, Da Vinci Code.
Oh, so good.
And Parenthood with Steve Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Ransom with Mel Gibson and Rene Russo.
Oh, I didn't know that he actually directed that one.
We
talked about that one recently. I got to check that one out.
Yeah, and I had no idea. It's an intense film. I can't believe he directed it because he's so well known for like family friendly.
All I remember from the trailers, "Give me back my son!"
Yeah.
Ransom, rated R.
Exactly.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
I remember being like, I was at a friend's house one night, and it was a sleepover, and we were like, parents were like, we rented Ransom and some other fucking movie, and I was like, I have to call my parents and see if I can watch Ransom. Of course, it was no.
Yeah,
so we watched the other one because the one person that couldn't watch Ransom was in the fucking room. So yeah.
Way to be a buzzkill, buddy.
I know, right?
No wonder people stopped inviting you over to their house.
I know.
And then lastly, just because we were just talking about her, Ron Howard also directed the Cate Blanchett-led The Missing.
No fucking way.
Which was also an intense-ass film.
With Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah.
I never saw that one. Wow, I had no idea that he was the director on that movie.
I think you'd like it because it's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, I should check it out.
Yeah. I love the score of this film. I think it elevates this film a lot. The reason why it's such a good score is because the composer is Hans Zimmer.
Hell yeah. That's so awesome. Iconic, for sure.
For sure. And we've picked him before. Both of us have, actually. I picked him in episode 15 for Crimson Tide, and you picked him in December for The Holiday.
Indeed I did. What a sweet, sweet soundtrack The Holiday has.
And the more intense soundtracks he's done, which are arguably more memorable just because they are intense, he did Gladiator, Inception, Interstellar, The Da Vinci Code with Ron Howard.
Oh, yes.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Hell yeah.
The Rock.
Nice.
The Lion King, the original, not the Soulless remake.
The greatest. Not that. No. But he did do the Soulless remake, too.
I know. He also did...
We just don't talk about it.
Just because we've recently talked about it in a recent episode, he also did the soundtrack to Broken Arrow. God, that movie sucks so bad. But the soundtrack is really good. And they actually use a piece of it in Scream and the Scream series of movies, and that classic dong 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 dong, that's from actually Broken Arrow, and Hans Zimmer made it. So that's kind of cool. Yeah.
That is cool.
He also scored Pearl Harbor. Terrible movie. Great score.
I don't remember the score, to be honest with you, on Pearl Harbor.
He did another one of your movies, actually. He did Black Hawk Down.
That's right, which is a wonderful soundtrack. I love that soundtrack.
He did The Last Samurai, which is a problematic movie, but very good soundtrack.
Yes.
the Christian Bale Batman movies.
Oh, hell yeah. So
and
good.
Sherlock Holmes movies, which also have great soundtracks.
Guy Ritchie.
That's right. Guy Ritchie, Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes movies.
I've never seen them.
Oh my gosh, they're so fun though.
I hear they're great. My wife is a fan. They just haven't come about in looking for a movie to watch. And I know Jude Law is in it. He's Watson, and I love me some Jude Law and Downey Jr. together would be great. I just, for some reason, have just not gotten around to it.
Well, I highly recommend them. I'm fans of both of them, so when you do get a chance, definitely give them a watch.
I shall, most definitely.
And speaking of the soundtrack, because we have the opportunity, I get to mention David Bowie in this episode.
Hey!
During a fantastic partying montage, we get to hear David Bowie's Fame.
Yes.
Great song that I was first introduced to when I watched Pretty Woman as I was a younger person.
My introduction to Fame could have been on the radio, but I remember it from an old Aerosmith behind-the-scenes video where a woman flashed the camera, and right when she did that, the song Fame came up. And it'll always be burned in my young man brain.
Perfect. So that is the movie Rush. I love that in the German dub version of the film, Daniel Brahl and Alexandra Maria Laura, who plays his wife, dub their own voices because they're both German.
Oh, sweet.
We like to throw that out when that happens in the movies we pick.
Oh, yeah, we talked about actors doing that, and I believe it was Jodie Foster in Inside Man that did the French dubbing of her voice, right?
Exactly, yeah. So we like to talk about that, and then Zazie Beetz did her dubbing for The Harder They Fall. So, yeah, we like to bring that up from time to time when it happens.
That's right. That is cool. I like that.
Daniel Brahl did such a great job embodying Niki Lauda in this movie and just acting in general. This character, he really brought to life, and I love that in this movie, we really don't know who the protagonist is. I love that about this film.
Yeah, I like that too. Is there really, though?
I know, exactly, right? Because in the beginning, you have this charismatic James Hunt played by Chris Hemsworth, and you're like, oh my god, he's so swoon-worthy. He's so cute in the 70s. Oh my god, look at his clothes, and he's walking around barefoot. He's so cute, and you just love him. And then Niki Lauda comes on.
Yeah, he's walking around barefoot. That's real cute. He's walking around bare-assed, and that's what's so cute. Come on, be honest now.
Yes, I will say you see Chris Hemsworth's backside in this movie. Fair point. But Niki Lauda comes along, and you're like, okay, he's an asshole. And then you develop all this empathy for him, and you see him in his personal life. You're like, no, he's a good guy. And I love that you're just back and forth on who to root for in this movie.
Hell yeah, I like that too. Because you like both of them, and it's difficult to be like, well, I want him to win.
No, I want him to win.
You want them both to win.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And despite receiving nominations for Best Supporting Actor at the Golden Globes, BAFTAs, Screen Actors Guild Awards, Critics' Choice Awards, and even the Saturn Awards, Daniel Brahl failed to receive an Academy Award nomination for his role as Niki Lauda, and myself, along with most other critics and audiences, feel that this is a major snub.
I would agree, since I just saw it, and I was completely captivated. Yeah, that's pretty nuts to hear that there was no Oscar nomination for him.
Yeah, and my movie Rush came out in 2013, but it's the same genre, the same similar storyline. It's a racing movie. Mm-hmm. Your movie had a budget of $97 million.
Yeah, it did.
Can you guess the budget of my movie?
Ooh, okay. There's a lot of practical effects in your movie, too.
Mm-hmm.
And the racing and stuff. I would say shooting might have been around the same length of Ford v Ferrari. Maybe Ron Howard directing, Chris Hemsworth. I'm going to say 110 million. Is that right?
You need to subtract $70 million.
Whoa, holy shit.
I can't believe this.
Well, I guess maybe that makes sense. Does it make sense? Was Chris Hemsworth not necessarily A-lister or something? My God.
I don't know how he wasn't commanding more money, because the budget of my movie was only $38 million.
Holy criminaire. That's pretty nuts.
And it was super practical. A lot of the Formula One cars were real cars. They were actually driven by their owners for insurance purposes because they're worth a shit ton of money, which is hilarious.
Hell yeah.
And it was only $38 million. I have no idea how this happened, but great job to the producers or director and cinematographer for making this movie happen with $38 million budget. But
Definitely.
the nice thing is that even though it only grossed $27 million in the US and Canada, worldwide it grossed $97 million.
Oh, wow. It grossed the budget of my movie. That's crazy.
Oh my God, it did.
That's wild.
Oh, that's awesome.
A lot of coincidences.
That's awesome. Well, and I think it makes sense that it did better worldwide because this is a Formula One movie about a British racer and an Austrian racer. Daniel Brawl is not a U.S. known actor. Chris Hemsworth kind of was in 2013, but was still growing into it. Whereas your movie had 2 A-listers in it. So I get that it did better worldwide, but oh my God, it grossed the budget of your movie. That makes oh, I'll be so happy. That's hilarious.
That's pretty fucking funny, actually.
I'm so glad to hear that you enjoyed this film. I really appreciate you giving it a chance and would love to hear if you have anything else to say about it.
I was disappointed that I watched it on Netflix because the streaming situation wasn't great. Not only, and I don't mean not great because I was having glitches or anything. It just, I don't have the HD situation of Netflix, I guess, where my wife and I aren't paying for that one. I couldn't really get the volume to a point where I wanted it to. It was very quiet. And after having watched my movie on 4K and having a very booming sound track go on with it, was a little disappointing, but I still got sucked in. The car crashes were brutal. My wife sat next to me. She just got these noise-canceling headphones, but I was screaming at the TV at certain points. My most favorite part, I think, is when Lauda gets asked by a reporter if his wife will stay with him because of his face after the accident, and Hunt just takes that reporter down, like beats the shit out of him in a janitor's closet, and I loved that. And after he beats him up, he goes, "Go ask your wife if she'll stay with you after this beatdown, son of a bitch," and like walks out. And I was like, "Fuck yeah!"
So awesome.
And that right there, like just beyond their rivalry, just shows the respect that he had for Lauda to be back after what he went through. And beyond their rivalry, and I was actually very glad that you were able to find out that the rivalry wasn't as intense as it's portrayed on the film. Of course, we need that drama for the movie, but the fact that in life they were actually good friends and they raced together. There's always a rivalry. I mean, I grew up as a swimmer, and I had a rivalry with a different school. Not one person. I was chasing the school's record. I wasn't chasing a person's record. Whereas in Formula One racing, it's you and one other person. So it was definitely something to be very captivated by, and the performances are really, really fantastic. And the movie is great. Ron Howard, almost every movie Ron Howard has made is good, and I think a lot of these movies are some of my favorite ones of his, like Cinderella Man, A Beautiful Mind, Apollo 13, based on a true story shit. Ron Howard really gets you with.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so appreciative that you just brought that up. He's great at the biographical storytelling.
Definitely, yeah. The practicality of most of those movies, especially Cinderella Man and Apollo 13. And Apollo 13 is decades ago at this point now, and that's Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, and Kevin Bacon, and Gary Sinise. Just a great fucking movie. And I have that on movie. 4K too.
Love that movie.
Yeah.
And
so I'm waiting for Rush to come out on 4K so I can own that and watch it with the sound the proper way.
I appreciate that. And yes, that is the right way to watch it. Though, for those of you who do not own it yet, it is available on Netflix, as John said. And I can tell you that, unfortunately, Niki Lauda was really asked that question at a press conference, which totally
that's
sucks.
Fucking lame.
And
yeah, that's bullshit.
When he turned 60, he was being interviewed by the Austrian Times, actually, which he was Austrian. And he stated that the journalists asking him how his injured face would affect his marriage was the biggest insult he ever had to suffer in his life.
Wow. That's... damn.
I'm so happy to hear you liked my movie, and I absolutely adore yours. I think these are two perfect companions this week. So thank you for this episode. And with Ford v Ferrari, would you watch it with your grandma?
Yeah, I would watch Ford v Ferrari with my grandma. I've watched it with my wife. I've watched it by myself. Most of the time, I've actually watched it by myself. I haven't watched it with my father-in-law since we saw it in theaters, but I know when I went and saw it with him, I texted both of my parents right away. I was like, I just saw Ford v Ferrari. If you guys are interested, I know you're Matt Damon and Christian Bale fans. It's a great movie about racing, and I don't like racing. And they went and texted me like a few days later, like, that was a really good movie. I'm like, yeah, it's a great, great movie.
Awesome. And I'm glad your parents like it. It's a very PG-13 film. I mean, there's no nudity, really no violence other than that friend brawl that they use Wonder Bread in, right? As a weapon.
Yeah, exactly.
I think just a little bit of swearing to make it PG-13, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I know in the back, that you always, a lot of people are curious, like, what's it R-rated for? Strong, brutal violence and drug content, strong sexual content. This is PG-13 for language and some peril. And there's definitely peril.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I think yours is R-rated for all of what I just said. Not the strong, brutal violence part, but nudity, sexual content, language, and drug use.
You are absolutely correct. Yes. There is all of those things in this movie.
But it makes it great because it's authentic to the time and what exactly went down. So it's totally awesome. So based on that, would you watch Rush with your grandmother?
Good question. I would not, although the sex and the nudity isn't super intense. It's more of a montage of partying. And so, yeah, you see Chris Hemsworth's backside. You see several pairs of boobs in this movie. And some drug use, but it's a montage, so I would actually feel comfortable watching this movie with my parents without getting uncomfortable. I think so. Think that several of my sisters have seen this movie too. So, yeah, I mean, I think that mid to late teens is fine to start watching this movie.
Yeah, I think so. My parents saw Rush in theaters, and they've been telling me for years to see it. So
Your G-rated parents watched this movie and liked it.
Yeah, they did. It was a shocker to me too.
I think that speaks volumes of the story and the acting, actually.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's awesome.
Seems like we are hitting the brakes here at episode 45 for Ford vs. Ferrari and Rush. Great movies. Thank you guys so much for continuing to listen. Episode 45 coming at you. Please do rate, review, subscribe, follow, tweet, retweet, email, interact with us on social media. We do enjoy doing that quite a bit. And speaking of interactions on social media, like we mentioned not too long ago, John Leguizamo dropped by and shared some of our stuff. We had a retweet from Bonnie Hunt on Twitter. We have a follow now from Bonnie Hunt on Twitter for doing Return to Me. Maybe not just that. Maybe she listened to the episode and really liked it. And then we had Houston. We have an astronaut, Mr. Mike Massimino, following us, which is fucking awesome. He's been in space, and that's just badass. And I am a big astronaut aeronautical fan. My grandfather worked on some of the first rockets that took the Saturn spaceship to the moon. So I am very much involved with the NASA world, and I think it's so badass that we have a NASA astronaut following us. So V, you did punch out a nice tweet, which also got Bonnie Hunt's attention. So good work on that.
I mean, it's all because you picked that movie, so nicely done.
That's true, yes. Indeed.
Team effort. Team effort. Over here at Movies You Miss. Yes, please follow us. As always, of course. Yes, please follow us at Movies You Miss Pod and email us moviesyoumissed@gmail.com. We love interacting with you. We love hearing suggestions also for movies we should cover. Please feel free to reach out.
Absolutely. I'm waiting for some people over in Finland to send us some Finnish films to watch. So come on, get on it, y'all.
Yeah. And also, I've been noticing someone listening pretty consistently from Decatur, Georgia. So if you're an audience member from Decatur, go ahead and reach out, and would love to say hi and thank you to you.
Absolutely, yes. So for next week, we are going to go a little bit back to episode 2, not the same movies, but female ass-kicking lead films. And I know that there are plenty of female-led ass-kicking films, but this one just blew me out of the water, and I loved it so much. This is 2022's, directed by Dan Trachtenberg, starring Amber Midthunder. This is Prey, everybody, the new Predator movie. If you have not seen this, it is on Hulu. It is Hulu produced, and it is fucking badass. So I will be discussing that next week, and I cannot wait.
I am so happy that you picked this film. I love this film as well, and the fact that we might be able to introduce some of our audience members to it who haven't seen it yet makes me so, so happy. So thank you for picking it.
Oh, hell yeah. I can't wait to get in. I can't wait to watch it again. V, what are you going with next week?
I picked the OG trailblazer of the female-led ass-kicking action movie. This is a movie I actually could have picked for several themes. I could have picked this for our sequel episode. I could have picked this for our director's cut episode. But when it comes down to brass tacks, this is a female-led ass-kicking action movie, so it's a perfect companion to Prey. This is the Sigourney Weaver-led Aliens.
Fuck yeah. I've only seen it one time, and I can't wait to watch it again.
How have you only seen it one time? I have
only seen it one time, like 3-4 years ago, maybe. It's been a while, so I don't remember much. I'm excited.
I want to say I've seen this movie more than 15 times in my life.
Oh, wow. That's a lot of times for you.
It is a lot of times for me. I love this movie. So I look forward to discussing it and also sharing a bunch of trivia about the movie.
As am I. Can't wait. Very excited for that one.
So until next time, thank you everyone so much for tuning in. And we like to close our episodes with film is a form of art. And in art, every opinion is valid, except if you think
you can't connect with a movie about a sport that you know nothing about.
Oh, nice.
Is that just again, Ford versus Ferrari I've liked since 2019, but Rush was and Senna, both completely different movies for me. And I connected with both of them, and I loved both of them.
And that makes me so happy to hear.
I'm glad. It makes me happy to say.
Great. Well, thank you so much for giving them both a chance.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, that's about it, everyone. Thank you all so much. And until next time.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.